We are back, and we are about to show you, and by we, I mean Jackie Liu and, Mina Ko are about to show you FREEPLAY, and the subtitle is Dreaming Bigger. Great. Are you all ready to take it away?
Oh my gosh, so ready. Here we go. Cool. Thanks, y'all. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Woo! Yeah, let's go. All right. Thank you so much to Fantastic Arcade for having us. We are so excited to talk about FREEPLAY, a queer games exhibit that took place in Richmond, Virginia earlier this year that featured 9 games by various queer artists and developers. We're going to talk about what went behind the production of this exhibit, how certain decisions reflected the change that we wanted to see in both fine arts and games contexts. We're then going to open up the floor for a quick Q&A session so you can ask about the exhibit and also pitch some questions to Jackie Liu, who was an exhibiting artist. Maybe ask what it was like to share your game. So a common theme that ties both me and Jackie's work together is the idea of dreaming bigger. Queering as an active and speculative process that actively challenges and critiques and reimagines the contexts in which we live. So, brief introduction. My name is Mina Ko. I also go by my online alias, moaw. I am the curator and fabricator for FREEPLAY. Community-oriented education and play, kind of my jam. I make clunky, libidinal experiences that push and tease both technological and social limitations. And we also have Jackie.
My name is Jackie Liu. She, her pronouns are good. Friend of Mina's, and really lucky to have participated in FREEPLAY as an artist. I'm based in New York, and I make a lot of interactive narratives that are experimental and somewhere in between, like web experiences, games, and comics. I make a lot of autobiographical work and often reference my experience growing up on like the 2000s internet and use that as like a channel to explore my relationship to myself and to technology.
Incredible. Like I mentioned before, FREEPLAY was a queer games exhibit that took place earlier this year in Richmond, Virginia at the Iridian Gallery, which is the only queer-focused fine arts gallery in the American South. We featured 9 games by various queer artists and developers from different backgrounds. We had folks who were displaying their games in public for the first time. We had industry veterans, we had professional illustrators, fine artists, journalists, all lending their voices to this experience. FREEPLAY explores the new possibilities when queer games can thrive in a shared physical space. What can games look like without the fear of censorship or having to conform to commercial demand? What conversations can happen when developers can engage directly with their audience in a shared physical space? Can we teach fine art curators what POG means? What forms of unique play can happen at the intersection of art, games, and queer culture? So it was exciting to see, how each context informed each other. Fine art galleries have their own unique patron systems and, etiquette going on, right? Folks that tend to visit fine art galleries have a deference for the work displayed there, are specifically there to support art within their community. This made maintenance a lot easier than having to maintain a games cabinet at like a barcade or something, right? Which was really great we were a largely volunteer-run exhibit. There was also no expectation for us to have commercially viable games. Games could be experimental, super niche, and not have the pressure to profit. This is reflected within our exhibit as we specifically curated experimental games that are largely free-to-play experiences online. In contrast to fine art spaces, games culture brings a really unique element of play that lowers the bar of entry. Fine art spaces can be really hard to approach, inherently accessible. Fine art has really dense theory and history. Something that we're really proud of is that there were like folks who never would have stepped foot in a fine arts like gallery before just come to play games, and that was like such a meaningful outcome from this experience. And yeah, so we were really interested in how the intersection of these different practices could help deconstruct and critique conventions held by the other. We were really excited to see how combining these practices could be generative, allow more gamers to be in fine arts contexts, allow more experimental games to thrive without the anxiety of censorship or profit. Because again, like queerness isn't just about representation. It's about actively challenging, deconstructing the systems that marginalize us. What kind of artwork are we missing out on by enforcing certain practices within fine art spaces? What kind of games are we not seeing because they're not designed for commercial appeal? And who even has the means or resources to make art in the first place? Our mission is to enable queer artists to share their games by mitigating some of the common hurdles that prevent them from displaying their work. This project started by pinpointing certain hurdles that make it really hard to display work, especially in fine arts contexts. First, in-crowd knowledge, making a resume, building a portfolio, writing an artist statement, all of that can make the application process like really difficult for people from outside of those communities. Another really big common inhibitor, just money, time, what it takes to transport, display, and promote your game or your art makes it really hard for folks to get their stuff out there. So we had today for our talk, I'd like to talk about these 3 different aspects of our production that addresses these various needs. First part of our production period included an artist incubator, a detailed fabrication process, and lastly, our Kickstarter campaign. So first things first, artist incubator. We had a 6-month production timeline in order to prepare for our exhibit. This included preparing written statements, promotional materials, and artwork for each game's display. We had our team of volunteers meet regularly with each team and provide edits to written statements, printed material, game footage, everything. As mentioned before, we had a lot of artists from outside of fine art spaces. Thank you so much. Fine art spaces who had never written an artist statement before. A lot of our folks came from digital backgrounds, self-taught developers that had never prepared like printed material before. Having like a very extensive production process with a lot of support from volunteers and mentors really helped each artist display their work at their best. Speaking of representing each artist at their best, really, really proud of this one. Each game had a unique display with a custom-made cabinet. Each team was allowed to print as much artwork as they wanted to display alongside their game. We covered all of the monetary costs, and all of the cabinets were built personally by our community of volunteers. We wanted our artists to be able to prioritize developing their games and not have to worry about the costs of transporting or displaying their work. So it really helped. Like our exhibit had like a clean, consistent look that fit our branding, and it helped level the playing field visually. Like no game stuck out specifically because they had more money or they had a more elaborate display. No game stuck out because of lack of access, right? Thank you so much. No, sorry. We had our designer, Cameron Buss, 3D model the PC cabinets for our fabricators to construct. Big shout out also to Ryan Ebert from West Philly CNC, who took on this task and helped refine and construct these cabinets. Each computer cabinet had a custom marquee and side art that was created by each team of developers. Okay, now the exciting part, or all of it's exciting, sorry. Oh, if you, Game Boy games, oh, sorry, extra slide. Our Game Boy games, which you can play here at our booth. We had a special packaging designer, Deo, help design the boxes for our Game Boy carts. We wanted them to look professional, like real Game Boy boxes. We went through several iterations of the design, and you can see our final design on this next slide here. Each game comes with a working cartridge, which we finalized our design and established pre-orders through our Kickstarter. Kickstarter time. Funding, super tricky. How do you justify the cost of something like this? Like a super niche, unprofitable exhibit of experimental queer games. When we were initially coming up with FREEPLAY, we had a lot of questions regarding funding. Do we appeal to the large collection of nonprofits in Virginia? Do we campaign for sponsorship? Eventually, we settled on Kickstarter, largely because independent funding means we have control over the money. We don't have to worry about censorship. The unfortunate reality of nonprofits is you have to kind of go through appeals with the board of directors. Richmond has its own interesting history regarding nonprofits and censorships in gallery spaces. The whole point of FREEPLAY is uninhibited expression, right? And we didn't want to have to worry about our artists having to self-censor. So we initially planned our Kickstarter to host in November, but with the development timeline, being able to allow certain allowances, flexible deadlines, it ended up being better to launch the Kickstarter the day of our exhibit opening. Here's some pics from the opening. We ended up fundraising over 80% of our goal within the first night of opening, and we fundraised over 3 times our initial goal throughout the course of the exhibit. We received a lot of really meaningful support. One of the folks who runs the games section on Kickstarter, Asia Prieto, personally visited us and helped answer a ton of questions regarding Kickstarter. Fun fact, which I didn't know, they're kind of like shifting their direction with it to provide more active support to developers, because kickstarting a game in the 2010s was a black box of an experience. We received a lot of recognition for our campaign, earning a project we love and a forward funds contribution. As a result of everything, we were able to put together a thoughtful, colorful, playful exhibit featuring 9 unique games that represented the best of Richmond's queer community and online games culture. Unfortunately, we were unable to bring all 9 of our games to Texas, but we brought a smaller, more portable version of our gay Game Boy to bring you our 3 Game Boy games. And here's a trailer that features them. It's no longer available on Kickstarter. The campaign is over. Okay. Cool. I love that about Google Slides. Sorry, that's our small gay boy, which you can check out at our booth. And yeah, first we have Love Always Runs Away, a narrative-driven game where you follow the diary of a young girl named Laura as she experiences grief, loss, and love through various chapters in her life. The decisions that you make at critical points help dictate her relationship to love and loss. Next, we have Guardian Frame Debrief, a lighthearted, low-intensity dress-up game about two girls in love, a giant robot, and the engineer that pilots and maintains her. As you help redesign your girlfriend, you also reveal a short love poem on her based off of your choices. And lastly, we have Jackie's Fishin' for Average Caucasian Boyfriends, a semi-autobiographical Game Boy game about expectations, queer identity, and the possibility of dreaming bigger, our subtitle, based on a true conversation Jackie had with her mom at a seafood restaurant. The game allows players to make the choice to fish or not. What happens when we refuse to play the game? Thank you so much. We're now gonna open the floor up to any questions. Whoa! Yeah.
Good job.
Yes, hello.
Lead up to the Kickstarter. So, like, how much time did you allot for, advertising, getting the word out, or, anything like that?
Yeah, really great question. Yeah. The question was, how much time did we allot for promoting the Kickstarter before the exhibit? Really good question. So I would say it started like even before the 6-month artist incubation period. That was actually when we started fabricating a lot of the cabinets. I was posting pictures of fabricating the big gay Game Boy all the way back in like, oh my gosh, like February of like 2023, I think. Spamming social links since the very beginning. But I would say we got really aggressive with promoting the Kickstarter probably like a month before the exhibit launched. And that was like when we really locked down the date, like, okay, January is when we're having our Kickstarter campaign. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To add on to it.
Yes.
Did you base the start of the Kickstarter based off of like how much traction and like interest was kind of building up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, did we base the Kickstarter off of like reacting to the traction of our social media? Is that correct? Yeah. It was a mix of, we had the Kickstarter campaign designed largely before the artist incubator started, and we kind of had like a donut hole situation where we like punched in stuff as we went along. The thing that changed the most was the fundraising benchmark. At first it was like really, really high. Then after talking with a lot of folks who ran their own campaigns, they were like, you gotta find the right balance of like barely funding it, but also enough like momentum that the campaign is like successfully guaranteed, and that's the thing that makes people want to spend more money, was my gist of it. We really locked down probably like the fundraising benchmarks like also a month before the Kickstarter launched. Very messy and exciting stuff. Did I answer your question all right? Yeah, no, thank you so much. Really good question. Any others? Oh.
Amongst the exhibiting artists and the organizers, how many people before the exhibit knew, trusted each other, like as a community, or maybe just speaking about like what kind of community building or fostering of trust was happening in people?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great question. So the question was in regards to how the relationship between the exhibiting artists, the organizers, the curators. Yeah, the origin, like the Iridian Gallery, that's like one of my professors and friends actually served on the board of directors. The Iridian Gallery is a fine arts gallery. They had never done like a high-tech exhibit like this before. So initially, even like pitching this idea like came from a place of trust. I had personally known Nathan Tersteeg is his name for like a decade. Oh, it's been 10 years since undergrad. Nathan Tersteeg for 10 years. And he had seen my body of work before, so that was like one part of it. A lot of the folks who were exhibiting artists were like friends of mine or were artists like from Richmond's community of game developers. So that's also been like a relationship that's been kind of like fostering for like over a decade, largely coming from connections from when I was living in Richmond during my undergrad years and also grad school in New York. So that is like a really, really great point, was that our call for submissions was not open to the public. It was like a very close call between like the small community of developers in Richmond, Virginia, and also like amongst some of my like grad school cohort, I would say. Did I answer your question all right? Yeah, thank you so much. Really good questions. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the question was, because the prompt was so open and free, like how did I come up with this, and like what was the creative process? So yeah, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be a part of FREEPLAY. I do function well under having like constraints and deadlines and like a prompt. And basically the prompt for me was like, do you want to make a Game Boy game for my show, for my queer game show? And I don't classify myself like primarily as a game developer. I'm more of like a experimental like media artist. I do a lot of stuff on the web, so never like touched Game Boy, GB Studio before, so this is like a learning experience for me. So that was like part of the process for me, is like learning to like make a Game Boy game. And I like to be a little like self-reflexive whenever I'm like trying a new media. So I kind of wanted to play on the idea of like, what does it mean to like make a Game Boy game? What does it mean to like make a game and like break away from the conventions of a game? And yeah, this also like timed up with a conversation I had with my mom, where she's like, I don't know, does the mom thing of pressuring you to be like, oh, like when are you gonna find a boyfriend? Like, go find like just like an average Caucasian one. Like, she meant that, the way she phrased it was like really earnest, but it was so strange, as if like she wanted me to just like fish one out. So that was sort of the basis for the game. And I was trying to play with like the conventions of like a typical like standard Game Boy genre fishing game as a way to represent like the kind of like bland choice of like playing the online dating game, like heteronormativity, and then giving the people the option to do something else or don't play the game, which progresses a narrative portion of the game that leads to the kind of final realization. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, is that us? Yeah. All right, we'll have an informal Q&A session out in the hallway, and you can also visit us at our booth and play Jackie's game and all of our other queer Game Boy games. Thank you so, so much.
Whoa! Yeah, let's keep it going for them, and let's see them out in the hallway with questions. Thank you all so much for being in here. The next talk will be in 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll see you here then.